Yeah.
And then we'll ride round to the Dudley Tunnel entrance here and go through the centre of town to the zoo.
Oh, okay.
And then we can just dodge through this housing estate and into Wren's Nest.
It is just adventure right in the middle of just such urban, industrial, you know, sort of area. Like Isla, I started mountain biking in the West Midlands in the 80s, looking for off-road adventure wherever I could. Along with everyone else, it seemed, I believed that mountain biking was an all-American invention. But it turns out there is another story, and one that's much closer to home. I decided to seek out some of the people who make up the British story. I began at the beginning with the Rough Stuff Fellowship, the oldest off-road cycling organisation in the world.
I found some films in here the other day, which you might be interested in.
What are these of?
These are films of Rough Stuff cycling holidays in Scotland in the early 70s on camping cycling holidays in Scotland.
Wow.
Yeah.
Piece of history.
Yeah.
Frank Briley was there right at the start, riding with a group across his native Lancashire.
You've got to go back and look at Lancashire as it was in the 1950s and early 60s, when it was an industrial base. And everybody in the Lancashire section in those days had a manual job. They were in factories, engineering workshops, coal mines all the week, and at the weekend they wanted some fresh air. And obviously off-road cycling was one of the ways that they could achieve that. A lot of the members used to go to work on the bikes in those days, and they only had one bike, and they would use it for going to work on and for pleasure cycling at the weekend. No changes whatsoever.
So what were the challenges of that?
Well, it meant that when you came to a hill, you had to walk. But nobody seemed to bother. Everybody accepted it. We just got off and walked. They're a completely different mentality, yeah. I always remember when we were in the French Alps and we were doing the Tour de Mont Blanc, and people kept saying, why have you brought your bikes? You know, why are you not just walking? Someone said, because it's there.
While some riders were escaping for fresh air, others stayed within the city walls. Where in the 1950s, Cycle Speedway was providing a brand new adrenaline rush. It also produced a bicycle that now has a familiar look to it. Something that for city kids enabled instant kicks and adventure. The tracker bike.
There were a group of us that did what we called rough stuff. I also made a tracker of an old frame and stick a 5-speed derailleur and cow horn handlebars on it. I actually love the physical sensation of riding a bike off-road. I just really enjoy how it feels. There's something, I think, when you're riding in an urban environment and you discover these places of having a little secret. Everybody else on the roads and in their traffic jams and their shopping centres, and you're out here having discovered all this stuff. See all the lime off the ceiling here in Runnels?
Yeah, I know, it's just like
Cheddar Cave. It seems to be in seams, just as though they've built it in sections. Can you see? And the lines come through in between.
That's amazing.
The boat coming, can you hear? It's getting louder.
As we rode around on our modern bikes, I began to wonder how the tracker evolved into something more than an adapted speedway bike. What was the missing link? I had heard tales of someone making bikes to ride off-road years before the arrival of mountain bikes from America. Jeff Apps.
Very much one of the figures of the time.
And what was he kind of, can you remember back then, sort of what he was known for, what he was doing?
As an innovator and somebody that was just out there putting together what were early mountain bikes. And I think the international story of mountain biking very much focuses on the team of people in the United States that have all become famous. A lot of them have made big companies out of what they did. But of course the same thing was developing in other places as well. It was developing here. I mentioned the trackers and then kids in the 1960s and 70s had, and then Jeff was one of the people that was taking that further, making bikes that didn't fall apart, experimenting with wheel sizes, tyre sizes, gear ratios and all the other things.
I quite enjoy trespassing and going places I'm not supposed to go, and bicycle's ideal for that. As kids, we would gather as a gang in the local woods and have little races and do jumps and all that sort of thing. But I always had this notion that it was serious. This was something that I felt could develop into a sport and an industry. That would be 1963, 64, 65, 66. Don't forget, mountain bikes didn't exist at this point. The only off-road two-wheeled vehicles were motorbikes, and specifically trials bikes were the most versatile of all. I wanted a bike to ride, and there was nothing available in the shops, absolutely nothing. And I came to the realisation that the only thing I can do is build the bike that's in my head. I had this fantasy that it won't clearly do everything a motorbike can do, but it could do a whole big chunk of what a motorbike could do. So much so that it would make a viable alternative. It was a constant process of development, evolution, trying things out.
So this is the stuff?
Yeah, Pip, I got this. These are all these drawings I've managed to save. It's here somewhere. Where are we? Yeah, there we are. That's it there. So that's about 1977.
This was a competition, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. The Sunday Times had this National Bike of the Future competition, because I think at that time we'd had the petrol issue crisis, and people were turning to bicycles as a transport option, and there was a sudden little upsurge, mini upsurge of interest in cycling, that this is the future. The judges were going to be like top people in design and bicycles, and I thought, right, at last, you know, I'm going to be able to get somewhere with this design.
What did you want your bikes to do?
To carry me through the landscape with the little bit of trials thrown in for good measure, you know, the odd stream to ride through, a hill to climb, maybe, you know, a long downhill and go as fast as hell as I could. But when the judges pronounced, which was about 9 months later, it's quite delayed, they said, oh, we had lots of entries, but they all looked like one-man-powered scrambles machines. So we decided not to award a prize. Now, they didn't think, oh, maybe there's a little market developing here that we could capitalise on.
One place that knows a gold rush when it sees it was developing its own brand of off-road riding, California. Were you aware of what was happening sort of the other side of the Atlantic, you know, on the west coast?
I became aware of that in 1980 or possibly 81. I just picked up a BMX magazine and there was a mountain bike. I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought, crikey, I'm not alone.
You know, Jeff and us, we were like on this whole wild cutting edge of exciting people. It was a whole new concept. You know, I mean, this whole notion that you're going to take a bike off-road? Are you out of your mind? You can't do that. And there'd be reactions like that all the time.
Obviously, I mean, I wrote to them, as one would, having discovered someone else in the world who's thinking along the same lines.
The bike, wow, look how laid back it is, you know. Look at the angles on it, the extra top tube. It was a really cool design.
Gary used to phone me up at about 2 o'clock in the morning, having clearly smoked a little something. And to be frank, Gary, and I hope he doesn't mind this, I couldn't quite really make out what he was trying to say, but it was quite interesting, but we didn't develop a relationship, shall we say.
Were they doing the same thing as you?
Well, I assumed they were, yes, but it turns out that their primary objective was to just belt like as fast as they could down a hillside.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, the image of mountain biking in the very beginning. What we like to do is actually a lot of cross-country riding, but what really sold the bikes was the image of downhill racing. I mean, repack, man, and that whole insanity, you know, that made people excited about the bikes.
It seemed to me that Jeff had designed the perfect off-road bike for the British landscape and climate. I wondered why, then, we aren't all riding his bikes.
The Gary Fisher movement was the one that caught on, and the Jeff Apps movement was the one that didn't catch on. Slow, high bikes over obstacles isn't really where mountain biking went. It went to the fast racing thing, you know.
I mean, it's entirely our fault, really, that we publicised the jumping thing and the dangerous side of it. And Jeff never wanted to do that.
It's that old thing, man. You got to have a big-time sizzle on a steak. And the downhill was this sizzle. Oh, man.
Gary is very important. His mother had been a movie publicist, and he understood how you sprinkled fairy dust over stuff and got magazine stories, and he knew that.
We had the coolest thing in town, man. And you go turn people onto it, and they go, wow, I'll never be the same. That is intoxicating to have that kind of power.
By the early 80s, the combination of California cool and the Brits' latent desire to get off-road at any opportunity meant there was a buzz in Britain. I came across two guys with their own brand of fairy dust who would go on to found a company that would change everything.
What do you make of that, Drew?
I'm not surprised. I should be, but not with Harry. It's always going to be something weird and wonderful.
Last night I couldn't sleep from, you know, the emotion of the whole thing, you know, seeing through again and everything.
The quarter of a century, really. So we're an unlikely combination, aren't we?
If you had your way, Drew, you'd have a Muddy Fox disc wheel on the back of these, wouldn't you?
Muddy Fox was cool. Muddy Fox had a cool name. Muddy Fox had cool marketing. You know? Yeah, absolutely. Muddy Fox.
Muddy Fox were completely different to all the other bike manufacturers I've come across. They were new to the scene. They had no heritage. They had no baggage.
The bike industry then was very staid. You know, it was for people who couldn't afford cars, genuine athletes. So there wasn't so much a gap in the market. There was this black hole. It was asking to be filled.
In terms of image, they're hugely important. I think Drew Lawson made an extraordinary thing for those days. He made a television commercial.
Drew and Harry were doing amazing stuff to, in effect, create the whole of the market in the UK. And it was very much down to marketing. They just took a sexy product and told people about it.
We just sort of focused, like being manic about it, that we're going to do it. We will make the market. It was the sort of attitude that we had.
It just seemed to work. More and more people just wanted the bikes, even if they'd never cycled before. There was this one we did with Jackie Phelan, who was the women's mountain bike champion. But when we submitted this to the bike magazines, all the male editors said, "Ooh, this is sexist, we can't run that." But of course they did, because there was money in it.
How did you feel about that as a young girl?
I think inspired a female person in the public eye that was also out there really doing stuff. Yeah, it's the only advert from the era that I can remember. It says it all.
Muddy Fox made the mountain bike, and some would say cycling, fashionable. But the traditional cycling community was sceptical, to say the least.
I remember a lot of debate within the very traditional cycling club that I was a member of at the time. Quite a lot of resistance to this new thing. Why would you want a mountain bike? What's it for? They're slower, they're heavier, and I can remember having some quite heated chats with people.
But Isla saw the opportunity to take her urban adventures to a whole new level. So this is it?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's just dropping straight off, isn't it?
We'll do it now.
Was everybody having a go at this, or was it just a few of you?
Well, there was a group of us that were egging each other on to have a go at more and more stupid drop-offs. I was probably one of the ringleaders, so I used to be the person that would go first, and then once you proved it was possible, then maybe more people would have a go. But
wow.
This was one of the worst, yeah.
I mean, this is the late 80s, you're doing this on very different types, yeah.
No suspension.
There must have been some accidents along the way.
There was a chap lived next door, and he came back one day with 2 broken arms, and his mum had a right go at him and said,
and he'd come here to do this?
Yeah, he'd come here to do this. And why did you ride off the slag heap? And he said, well, the girl next door's done it.
Eager to venture beyond the slag heaps, Isla would join an emerging UK race scene. I discovered that one of the characters at the forefront of those early events was none other than Jeff Apps, whose gatherings at Wendover spawned a legendary downhill.
It became known as Suicide Hill because of one rider who thought he would really push the boat out. So he came down this hill, and at the bottom you can see there's a slight ridge. And at that point he took off, flew through the air, the bike bounced, and he went way into the trees there, right over our heads, and we heard all these branches breaking.
I took a photo of him in mid-air, and I felt slightly guilty afterwards. You know, I should have been doing something else than I would have done to stop him.
But someone did make some comment about the soles of his feet, because that's all we could see as he disappeared through the trees.
Wendover and its annual bash meetings became synonymous with UK mountain bike racing. It was the obvious choice for MacAskill and Jeremy Torr to launch the first ever national championship series.
We would get maybe a couple of hundred at the first events. By the second year, we were getting many hundreds of riders coming along. What was the atmosphere like? People were just pleased to have an event. They had something organised. I say that loosely. I mean, we had very little experience ourselves in organising races whatsoever, or any kind of event. People mucked in. They came with a spirit. We organised them with that spirit. Hey, you want fun, we want to have fun, let's just all be relaxed about it. We did only have one rule, and that rule was no cheating.
And they're off.
Cannock was a big one.
I heard there was a bit of a problem getting toe clips in at the...
Gee, the rain there was just terrible, and the mud there was just terrible.
215, 142. Go on, Colin.
And people were collapsing. They got so covered in mud during the race that when they fell on the ground afterwards, you couldn't see them because they just blended in with the mud they were lying on.
Get into the operating theatre.
I think the very important thing was that nobody would have anything to do with British cycling and any of the official bodies. It was very much a freelance, wild thing going on.
Don't be shy. This is Steve Warland from Team Muddy Fox, and he's out to get up this impossible hill.
We consider ourselves pirates. We're the free spirits, we're the interesting guys, we're doing something new.
By now, mountain bikes were appearing all over the UK. But what I was surprised to learn was that it was an entirely urban icon that had led the way.
The first widely available, widely promoted mountain bike in the UK wasn't the Muddy Fox Mountain, it was the Muddy Fox Courier. It was a bike that you could then go to the city streets with.
I completely messed up that one. I didn't think we should go what I thought was down market to this relatively cheap bike.
We had an exhibition, and he actually left the bike behind. He didn't take it to the exhibition, because he rejected it. I said, but true, I said, I just air freighted this damn thing. We sold 30,000 of those bikes in one exhibition, in 2 days. It was unbelievable. The whole of London, in a matter of 2 weeks, it was just white bikes going all over the place.
I think if you asked anybody in London at that time to name a mountain bike brand, it would be Muddy Fox.
Mountain biking just seemed to be one of those lifestyle things that people grasped onto. How many people ever went off-road on these things? Well, a tiny, tiny percentage. It was a lifestyle fashion product.
It's like, man, the whole thing is exploding. Because all that time in the 80s, everybody was out of stock, man. Everything you could make would sell.
Boom. Everybody had one, and it changed what bicycles looked like and what a bicycle was.
It was a fantastic time to be in the mountain bike business. Oh, man.
The cycle industry in the UK was now enjoying a boom, and Muddy Fox were getting ready for the next level, when events took an unexpected turn.
We'd been borrowing money for the next wave of bikes, and the company that was supplying the money were frozen by the stock exchange. And in a domino effect, our assets were frozen. We didn't have control over our assets anymore because they were tied in with this financial company.
They squeezed our company to get their cash out, and eventually we finished up closing down.
How did that feel, Drew?
Oh, it was devastating. Oh, it was a horrible feeling.
I mean, you put in this massive amount of effort and creativity and money.
A lot of money. And then when we closed down, nobody lost money except the directors.
Yes. It was such a horrible feeling when it went down. But now I'm remembering the good times, and that's a nice thing.
...1988 was a bit of a turning point. We had a race up at Peebles in Scotland.
We have got St John's Ambulance here today, for which we thank them very much for coming.
That was the very first race, I believe, that the professional Peugeot guys came in.
We looked at Tim Gould and Baker, those first Peugeot guys. We looked at them as like complete aliens, as, you know, we don't like these people. We don't want these people in our sport, because our sport isn't like road cycling.
Tim Gould and David Baker came in. They'd come from a road cyclocross background and turned up at a mountain bike race and just blew everybody away.
They're actually going to the front of the field and staying there are the cyclocross riders, mainly because they're very much more professional about it. They know how to use tactics, they know how to train. They will always do better than the Neanderthal rider.
they brought an altogether more professional attitude to the preparation, the training and that sort of thing, and were phenomenal athletes.
Okay, well done for you and Peugeot, David. Nice win on your first mountain bike event. What was it like?
The start was a bit chaotic, and then once we got clear of the start, it was alright.
Do you think you'll ever go at doing a few more, yeah?
And we've got a few down already, and hopefully doing most of the series.
Well, that sounds good news for mountain biking in general. Great, well done, nice win.
It surprised us, it took us off guard completely, because the prizes that people were winning at our races were ridiculous.
We did come home 10 minutes before everybody else. Actually, if you like, David, you can have a cap and a t-shirt to go with those.
You never thought that if somebody would come along with an emblazoned car and all the gear to get them all punched up and all ready to fight, that we were putting on events that would attract people like that.
Okay, well done.
As soon as it started becoming more professional, then you got more money coming into the sport, which is all good, but it did change the sport. And in fact, it became a sport.
We started to have to get rules in, which we weren't keen on. We weren't keen on them because it meant that they had to be policed, or then there was room for argument. For some of us, myself, Jeremy Torr, who was a big guy in those early days, thought, this may not be enjoyable for us any longer.
Tim Davies must be feeling good. He's got a 9-point lead over Gould.
So for Gould to win the title, he's got to be at least 4 places clear of Davies.
I pulled out, Jeremy pulled out, and then the whole scene flourished.
How do you feel about that?
I feel good. I feel really good. Yeah, it's... I never got in on anything before on the ground floor. And to have been involved in those early days and to have seen it go from just a few people up to hundreds, up to thousands, I just think it's brilliant.
The pirates may not have liked what was happening, but for the emerging magazines, the star riders were their lifeblood. And Steve Bear was there to capture their every move.
Well, here's where we store all the 35mm slides, which was the way we used to do everything, on sheets, numbered sheets. If I need to find it, I look it up on the computer. It gives me the sheet number.
How far back does this go?
Well, I started shooting 1988.
So this really is the history of mountain biking contained within these,
absolutely.
These vaults.
Out of the early riders, one star was to burn particularly bright. Perhaps the James Dean of UK mountain biking, Jason McCroy.
This was from the movie Dirt, which was made in '95. This was up at Pete Tompkins' place. Pete was the producer and director of the movie, whose idea it was.
He just so looked the part, Jason, didn't he?
He had it all, Jason. He had that sort of look that just worked. And this one here shows some of the action he was capable of. He had an amazing riding talent. There are a lot of guys who are very talented on bikes, but he could also translate that into success in racing.
I actually think the first time I saw him was maybe back in '92, and I remember him just coming back, like flat out style, coming past me on the trail, foot out, mouth wide open, just really stylish, fast and aggressive.
Heading into the jumps, he was only a tenth of a second inside Alistair's time, but another fast final K saw him take the goal with a second to spare.
In addition to that, he had a great personality. He was larger than life, and he had the looks to go with it too.
Jason made that step to go over to the US and to race and to seek sponsorship because the US was where mountain biking was at in those early 90s.
Who is this Jason McCroy character? He's put a lot of bike riders in the bleachers and goes to the final against Miles Rockwell.
He was winning everything in the UK, and him and his dad took that step to fund himself to go out there.
This is a very close race indeed.
Over 50 miles an hour. Now look at McCroy, he comes around, I haven't seen anybody pass there all day.
Great pass, taking advantage of an opportunity. Now Jason McCroy with the advantage. Rockwell's almost in the fence, goes through the mud.
McCroy making his move, powering around on the outside to take the win.
I think Jason's impact on mountain biking, globally was so pivotal.
Got a contract with Specialized USA, the first guy that's got this overseas contract, and started winning some huge races in the US and was really starting to put British mountain biking on the map.
Could do anything on that bike.
And you say this was just before Jason died?
That was a few months before he died. I think it was probably spring '95.
We'd been with Jason the day before he died. My last sort of departing picture of Jason was him turning out of where I lived with my mum and dad and grew up. Him turning left on his Harley, just looking cool as fuck. Driving away, a big loud Harley. Gave us a wave. We turned the other way and went to the pub, and I never saw him again. Got the call from his mum the next morning saying Jason didn't make it home last night, and we were just in total shock. Couldn't believe it. The British kind of onslaught was led by JMC. What he managed to do in a very short space of time is just be incredibly exciting for the world of mountain biking. I think that started something in UK mountain biking that never left. I think there's this attitude in UK mountain biking that we're going to be, the top riders from this country are going to be stars globally. It's just a given.
Once the British got a hold of it, the party got to be a really good party.
As the 90s progressed, a new trend emerged. Instead of competing in a number of disciplines on the same bike, riders began to specialise, which brought new names to the fore.
Steve Peat. What an incredible rider. What a fun guy to watch and everything. And he changed it. He changed the whole downhill scene.
13.5 seconds. That is fast. I mean, that has been the fastest downhill event rider today.
But the bottom bit were fast. I jump up there. All right.
I mean, that guy, he was just good and crazy.
The new breed of UK riders were ambitious, aggressive, wild. There was just one thing holding them back: the bikes themselves.
And you've got to remember, when you've got a fully rigid mountain bike, even with big fat tyres, you were shaken to bits when you got off onto anything that wasn't a dirt, fire road.
Something else that has helped the riders get down in one piece is suspension. The onset of the bouncy bits began in earnest in '88 with the flex stem. This simple system proved very popular with riders on bumpy descents, and in 1990 Off-Road also produced a rear suspension bike.
Rob, do you remember the first time you encountered a bike that had suspension?
Yeah, front suspension, 1993. And it was suspension that was that bad, it would have been better without it, to be honest. Yeah, it was that bad. It was definitely, like, the early 90s was an incredible time, and I wouldn't swap it for the world to be, for any other period of mountain biking, because there was so much going on. Like I say, front suspension, then people invented rear suspension. The bikes were changing every week, I mean, I was sat, when I started riding for Giant, I went to Los Angeles to ride. We went up into the mountains and we tested bikes, and we'd do a run, come down, and all the Taiwanese would be there with computers, and then they'd email off what we want done. from the mountain, and 2 weeks later, you know, we'd have new frames to test again, and that was the development. It was incredible. One thing led to another, and now we've got these incredible bikes.
Well, now you could go to places where the Rough Stuff Fellowship guys in the 1950s were pushing their bikes, and all of a sudden you could now ride your bikes.
How is everyone, right? You got a parachute? Saddle or saddlebag? I'll go for the saddlebag. You want me to put that in my backpack? Yeah? I'll just keep building a bit of atlas before we leave. That's my knees, that is. That ain't the bike.
As bikes were rapidly evolving, new places were needed to test the limits of what a mountain bike could do. And it was one of the stars of the racing who was instrumental in kickstarting the UK Trail Centre boom.
Pace rider Sian Roberts gained her second win in the series.
This was our training ground, and we just thought it was such a great place to ride, and it would be just perfect to invite other people in here to ride.
We could see the huge potential in Coed-y-Brenin. We knew the forest, but and it's a really nice forest.
Yeah, so the idea really was to just provide good trails, challenging trails, kind of World Cup standard trails was the idea to begin with, but with waymarkers so people could find a way without having to have that local knowledge.
Not getting lost, no faffing about.
Yeah.
Probably like a theme park for bikes.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think the UK has probably got more trail centres than any other country. It became something here, and it's spread over to the States and a lot of other countries as far as, you know, trail centres go. So I think UK is definitely a leader on that. UK's number one in trail centres, no doubt.
He's doing enduro, isn't he?
Yeah.
Last year.
I think it's called a midlife crisis, getting back into it in your mid-40s. Yeah.
Still do.
Good way to hurt yourself. Really good way to hurt yourself. But yeah, it's just as much fun as it ever was. Probably more now.
Huh? Women's field, like we got the top three riders in the world as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's even more bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then again, I suppose, who was before Tracy? Was there anyone before Tracy, women that were good? Yeah. Was Tracy the first top English bird?
Right, well this is 94, 95.
Oh, right. Oh, very early.
I have got pictures of her going on that Jason Mosley thing.
Have you?
Yeah.
That was when you let the balloon up, wasn't it, Mo?
Yeah.
That one.
European mountain bike champs. I think that was my first junior European champs race, and this was part of this trip was funded by Jason McCroy Fund. Managed to get onto the podium, and actually a whole crew of us had a balloon. I had a big white balloon with Jason's ashes, and you can see the kind of whole British crew there with white balloons, and then we all let them off into the sky there. It's pictured in one of Mum's little pictures.
Has it surprised you, the success that Tracy's had?
Oh, totally. I can remember the very first time where, well, you never think your child's going to do it. And I remember the first time I thought, actually, she could do this. And this was the Worlds at Aura.
Oh,
in
Sweden.
Sweden. And she hadn't really, podiumed before, but she came in 5th at the Worlds. And I suddenly thought, oh my God, my daughter really could win a World Cup or really could win a World Championships. That was the first time I really thought, wow, she could do it. And there you go.
I was always a bit of a pessimist in life.
And there was, in those early days, this was an area that was hugely important because you had the Malvern Classics, didn't you? So
yeah, certainly that race at Malvern's, the Malvern Classic was the big kind of bike festival of the year, really, for the scene in the UK. And for us to live on the doorstep of it, not really realising at the time how big that event was. I know we went to watch and then we went and competed. And I think that really did probably put Malvern on the map. It was a venue that everyone came to and flocked to, and the dual descender, the bomb hole, the kind of classic features that made the Malverns what it was were huge.
Trials, the discipline of riding through a series of obstacles without setting foot on the ground, had always been a niche part of UK events. But in the late 90s, two urban riders would take things to a whole new level. The moment was captured by Chainspotting, a film that would have an influence for years to come.
I was riding at my friend's house one day and they had Chainspotting playing on the TV. I remember just seeing it and just being awestruck.
We basically paid for our own tickets to get on it, and we were like, we just want to be on it. And a day in, the guy who was filming it, the guy called Nick Brown, he was like, I'm so glad I've got Trials Riders on here, because we could literally do something outside the hotel that we were staying in to go and film Steve Pete on a mountain. Because you can do it anywhere.
Mountain bike trials have been sort of fairly basic at the level we were doing it and reporting it in the magazines. There'd been a few people who were considered trials riders, but I guess they weren't really riding trials. They were doing tricks and stunts on their bicycles. This must have been the early 90s, I think it was the first shoot I did with Martin. If you hold it up to the window, you can...
I went along to a mountain bike race with a friend, Martin Hawes, who rode motorcycle trials as well.
Martin Ashton and Martin Hawes turned up on borrowed bikes, I think.
Great, isn't it?
Just blew everybody away. It really opened my eyes to see what could be done. And so, of course, in the usual fashion, you get their phone numbers and arrange to do a photo shoot.
Oh wow, a young Martin Ashton leaping off a rock, that's just so good.
At the time, to be really honest, in the UK, the riding level in mountain biking was just atrocious for trials. It was just, there was no one who was actually any good. But coming from a background in motorcycle trials, mine and Martin's level was pretty high. You know, we were both #1 and #2 in the country at that time.
The marriage of trials, photography, film and sponsors was a match made in heaven, even before YouTube. But it was one where the stakes always had the potential to be upped.
Martin would always go out and find something incredible to ride. More often than not, it was just about safe enough to do.
I don't ride over bridges every day to practice trials, but you know that you can take them skills to a place where it's going to be like, wow, it can't go wrong now. But that's just mind over matter, really. That's not really trials riding. That's like, how much do you want that photo? How much do you want that bit of video? And I've been in situations where I'm up on something and I can just think, well, I've got this much space to ride across. You know, like if I fall off either side, I'll definitely die. So don't ride outside those things. That's it. That's the world. It's that wide. Don't ride off it. Now, that's actually quite wide. You could ride along that. The difference is, I've made a decision, I'm not going to ride off it. You might be thinking I might.
I remember there were a few times when I told Martin that, you know, I'm not going to photograph it, so don't bother to do it, because you're going to kill yourself doing that kind of thing.
If he took the photo, he knew I'd try it, and I think my mind had gone past what I can do on my bike and how much I wanted the photo, and it was more than my skill level. So thank God for Steve Bear.
As a new century dawned, mountain biking in Britain was in a very healthy state. But a twist of fate would take it to a whole new level, in the creation of a spiritual home.
Early summer in Scotland and Britain's highest mountain, Ben Nevis, looks peaceful enough. But all that's about to change. In the shadow of Ben, the World Cup mountain bike tour has come to Britain for the first time, and the hills are coming alive.
In 2002, Japan were due to host a downhill World Cup. Late in the day, they backed out. Fort William, previously turned down, seized the opportunity. The timing couldn't have been better for a rising British star.
So we've got 2002 footage of that first ever World Cup in Fort William,
The rainy and misty conditions making an already difficult course even harder.
It was a new course for all of us. It wasn't like we'd been practicing on Fort William track for years either, so it wasn't like a huge home advantage.
The atmosphere was tremendous.
I think it's the first time we'd ever seen anything like it. The crowds, so many hundreds of people round the course and round the finish area, banging on the sides and doing Mexican waves. So the whole atmosphere was electric anyway, you know, and then to see your own daughter come down and do it was quite special.
Tracy Mosley here had a crash in the qualifying and so starts much earlier than her ranking of 7th place, but she's looking pretty smooth now in the start gate. The fastest qualifier, Missy Giove, and further down the...
So it was my second year of racing full-time.
Not renowned as a pedlar.
I'd had a couple of decent top 10 results at World Cups, but to win one was almost out of the question.
The world champion dropping into the arena now, and Caroline Chausson.
And Caroline Chausson, French rider, had dominated. If she wasn't winning, then she basically, Missy won. But there was the two of them, no one was really winning.
Previous week, really looking smooth, but Giove has gone down, she crashes. That is going to have dented her confidence.
The worst thing is you feel so guilty because you're hoping that everybody else is going to punch her and everybody else is going to have an off or they're going to have a bad run. And you feel, I shouldn't be thinking that, but, you know, you're just hoping and praying that everybody else has a bad day.
Home turf is calling her down to the finish, and Tracy Mosley is on course to set the fastest time. Jumps into the arena, and it's just the straight to go. She can see the time ticking away. Tracy Mosley powers in, and it's the fastest time so far. And Missy Giove is onto the final section. Mosley on tenterhooks as she watches the course. Giove almost loses it as she comes down. Mosley knows she has the win.
If I could have asked to have won my first ever World Cup somewhere, that would have been the place, you know, to have the first ever race in the UK and to have actually won it. It was almost too good to be true, and yeah, even now I kind of look back and think, wow, that was a perfect start to my career, really.
Amazing, screaming on the podium and sort of seeing her, but watching afterwards the queue of kids wanting her autograph. I just stood back and watched, and everybody was so thrilled to have a British girl win.
Dad, you remember that day?
I do, yes. I'm crying.
Very emotional for us both, hasn't it been?
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations to Tracy Mosley. What a brilliant victory and her first World Cup win on home soil.
Elsewhere in Scotland, a young Danny MacAskill was discovering a love of bikes. But having grown up on the idyllic island of Skye with its mountains and lochs, it would be the streets of Edinburgh that would ultimately showcase his potential.
In 2009, I made this one video around Edinburgh with my flatmate at the time. When we put it online, it was quite a big surprise. Kind of hit the mainstream, you know, through the news, through all these kind of different websites and things that you get, and it was a proper viral thing. So.
I watched his video over and over again, and I was like, what is it doing? What is it? And then I just designed my own video to fit that kind of thing, a YouTube viral hit. And I was like, I've got to do that. I ended up putting a lot of hard work into Road Bike Party, and it was all kind of an idea where I was just praying people wouldn't go, why did you think we wanted a proper road bike stunt film? Sounds stupid, but that's also what kind of made me think that people would, because it's kind of stupid. I was hoping for 100,000 views over a period of time. You know, I was like, if I could get 100,000 views, I wouldn't feel like a total dickhead for making this film. Unfortunately, on the YouTube channel, which was my own channel, was assigned to my email address. So every time someone subscribed to my channel or left a comment, I got like a ding on my phone. And 1 million people watching your video on a phone for 24 hours sounds like ding, 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 ding. It just never stops.
And the Ridge was kind of a different one. I wanted to have a bit more of an epic feel and really had very low expectations for the film. The Ridge was almost the same surprise to me in terms of kind of viral side that inspired 2009 was, you know, all those years ago.
It's like, oh, I wish I'd done that. That's really good. But I could never, I mean, he does a fabulous job on that video. It's brilliant. But that is mountain biking in an extreme for sure. And my gran thinks that's mountain biking, so...
She can't be wrong.
My nan's never wrong. Never.
It seems mountain biking has always been a family affair, sometimes literally. Today one name is synonymous with the global scene, Atherton. Perhaps the blame for all of that lies firmly at the door of Dan.
I'm constantly trying to replicate that first kind of time I did my first big jump, really. You know, that feeling you get then, all the way through your career, you're almost constantly chasing that feeling almost. And Athy was always more kind of confident in what he thought could be done. Like, I remember times when Athy, we'd be at the jumps when we were younger, kind of before we got into mountain biking. And he came up in all this armour and like a motorbike helmet that he'd borrowed. And me and our little mates just like stood at the edge like, what's he going to do here? And then just coming herring down the road to hit this jump. And he didn't even nearly make it. Like, he took off and it was so far he just was twisting in the air and had a massive crash. It was alright. And in my eyes, that was the first time, you know, I remember seeing like the ambition that Athy had.
I think, like he said, it's always about, you know, like having that feeling again, that same feeling. Like, you know, I can remember winning Fort William for the first time, and I was so upset that I'd won. Like, it was just such a huge relief, and I couldn't stop crying, and it was just, and like, I wish that everyone could feel like that, because it was such a good feeling, and it doesn't, and it's such a shame. And then so you think, right, well, what can I do now that will make me feel like that? Because it is addictive, you know. You wanna feel like you got to, you know, you ride your bike because you feel like you're invincible. You feel like you can do anything.
Since 2002, Fort William has grown up into one of the world's leading downhill venues. 2016 looks like a very special year.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the most anticipated...
Even the sun's come out, and the breeze is keeping the midges at bay.
Legendary Fort William World Cup. Probably the biggest World Cup of the year. I mean, I don't know, viewer-wise, but on site, there's nothing like it. I mean, look how many people are here. It's a long way for everyone to come every year, but it's a pilgrimage. It literally is a pilgrimage.
I'm proud to say that you've done right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's someone that only actually needs one name. Peter!
Yeah, it's gonna be weird up at Fort Bill this year. I mean, I've had so many people just say, "Oh wow, it's your last year racing there." I was going to take a year off and not go this year, but I'm definitely coming up now.
You know, I've had such a ride with him, really. It's the end of a road for someone who's been in mountain biking from the very, very beginning. Right from the start of downhill, you know, Petey's been right at the top of it. There'll never be anyone else like Steve. Not with his results, not with the length of career, and certainly not with the following and the love of the fans that he has. That I think is unrepeatable.
Someone I wasn't expecting to see here was Martin Ashton, the trial supremo who had his life turned upside down.
Just had a really awkward fall, fell from about 3 metres and just I landed on my shoulders there, sort of straight down, and my body just kind of whipped round, sort of my legs towards my face, and it just snapped me clean in half. Just like a whack, that was it, you know, and I was just laid on the floor thinking, that's that. I just knew straight away. I didn't have a moment's, didn't think, oh no, what's happened? I was just like, that's career over. I was very aware, as much as I was aware I was paralysed, I was aware I nearly died. And I was filled with, like, phew, like, wow, that was close. I nearly died. The best thing about the internet now, social media, is the comments. Because people put an awful lot of thought into their comments, and I think it's one of the things that got me through my accident. So with such relative, I wouldn't say ease, because it hasn't been easy, but with a real sense of positivity, has been buoyed by an actual voice coming through all the time from the cycling community saying, we really want you to handle this, and we're really proud of how you're trying to handle it.
Well, Martin just said, can we get back on a bike? And I said, we can have a go. Why not? What could go wrong? You could get hurt. Hang on a minute. He's already pretty hurt, isn't he? And if he wants to do it, that's fine.
I was watching the Sochi Olympics, actually, in the lounge, and I was watching sit skiing, where they sort of, they've just got a single mono ski underneath this bucket seat. And I was watching it, and my mountain bike that I had at the time, previous to my injury, was in the living room. I just had it there because I just could like looking at it. And I was looking at this mono skiing, and I was looking at the bike, and my brain took a little while to catch up, and I was like, just put that seat on that bike and roll down a hill. They're already doing it. They're just using gravity.
The first time around the car park, within 2 minutes he was doing stoppies and wheelies. So, you know, literally.
That's where the Back on Track video came from. We were just like, right, okay, get me to the top of a really cool trail, and just, if there's some good riders with me who can keep up to make sure I keep going, then we'll just film it.
I mean, I've always been around racing people, and racing people tend to have a can-do attitude, if you like. They always try and push themselves further, and Martin has exactly that attitude. I want to get back on a bike.
To have that level of enjoyment on a bike after my accident is amazing, you know, because I never thought when I had my accident that one of the best days riding bikes in my life was yet to come.
Like so many, I watched Back on Track on YouTube, and I admit I shed a tear. But here on the hallowed ground of Fort William, along with all the other pilgrims, I was about to witness the magic of Martin Ashton.
You know, Ashton, you just can't keep a good man down, can you?
Martin Ashton is back, and let's hope it isn't with a bang. Oh, he sets off out of the gate, incredible pace.
You know, he's been through so much.
Off the jump he goes. His bike's going to get X-rayed after this, there's no doubt about that.
And you can see how much it means for him to get back on a bike. That's the whole thing. Like, he was another one like Pete who just lived to ride bikes, and thank God, perhaps in a slightly different way now, he can still get on a bike.
Ashton sends it massive. Well, look at that. on this big finish now. The crowd are going wild. This is what they came to see. Martin Ashton then comes down towards the line. Martin Ashton is back.
And that demonstrates how to put something like this into perspective, because you don't know what's ahead, you only know what's happening at this moment. And this might be the thing that facilitates that greatest moment to happen, and beyond.
I've had a fascinating journey through UK mountain biking story. One defined by pioneers, innovators and risk takers, who all played their part in what is now a thriving global scene. The bikes themselves have evolved into awesome pieces of kit that often come with a hefty price tag.
The price of bikes is escalated because of the technology we've got. Most people now turn up at a trail centre and their bike's worth more than their car. That really isn't uncommon. And the thing that's happening now, people are they're stealing a bike, they're stripping them down. I've actually been using the data tag system that they don't only track and mark your bike, they also can track all the components. So right, we've got a nice little section of switchbacks here. Mountain biking has just given me such an amazing life. I didn't ever expect to still be involved in the industry like I am now. I just want other people to be able to experience that love for being outdoors, for getting fit, for going somewhere under your own power. It's such an amazing way of transport and a way of having fun. And I love seeing people get that enjoyment, that buzz from it, and seeing a big smile on their face. Way better, brilliant! Yo!
One thing that unites all of us, it seems, urban or rural, pro or novice, cross-country or downhill, is the love of the ride. And all I want to do now is get back on my bike. I discovered someone in North Manchester whose life was transformed by mountain biking.
Well, I've always been into cycling when I was younger, and then I just stopped, like a lot of people do, and sort of got into going to work and going home and eating my tea, and then going to work and going home and eating my tea, and eating the wrong food and not really doing any exercise, and I thought, I've got to do something about it, so I just bought a bike again, got back into riding my bike, and sort of rode my bike more and more and more every year, and yeah, just got more into it.
Jason has broken world records with the likes of Guy Martin and regularly competes in 24-hour endurance races, both at home and abroad. Today's ride day is all about overnight adventure on your doorstep. Bike packing has become really popular, a way to turn your bike into a pack mule and go anywhere. We're heading for an overnighter in the local hills.
So Jason, we bivvying up here somewhere?
Yeah, well the wind's picking up a bit, isn't it? So yeah. I think, yeah, that looks like a nice spot over there. Yeah.
Cracking view up here, Jason, isn't it? I can't quite believe that we've come all this way and then we're out looking down on Manchester.
What do we want? Creamy pasta with chicken and spinach? Or Balkan risotto?
Balkan risotto?
Yeah, risotto from the Balkans.
Doing this kind of stuff, that, you know, we're just miles from the city, finished work, having a mini adventure, but back to work tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is something you do regularly?
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't do it every night. I am married.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll arrive completely knackered, set up a bit of a camp. As long as you're really tired, you can get a decent night's sleep.
Yeah.
Put the kettle on. What more do you want?
Exactly.
And when you wake up, you've got a decent view.
I was going to say, what does the average person at work think? You know, and they go like, "Oh, what did you do last night, Jace?" Like, you know, what did you say?
Well, they think I'm mad. But do you know what? I think it's the other way around. I think that if you spend your life, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, because you know, I like watching Emmerdale. But if you spend your life watching Emmerdale, going home, eat your tea, sit down, watch Emmerdale, go to bed, get up, go to work, go home, etc., etc., then you're mad. You're absolutely bloody mad, because you know you can just do stuff like this. It doesn't cost you anything.
Give it a try.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go on. Tell me if it's ready. Not bad, not bad.
That's all right. A few years ago, I just thought mountain biking was all about training, riding fast, racing. That is all it's about. But it's not. It's about all sorts of different things. It's about all that, but it's also about just getting out in the hills. It's about doing daft things like this. It's about I don't know, making stories for your grandkids.
You like Jace?
Right, mate. See you in the morning.
Alright. Jace?
Oh.
I'm a bit cold.